Emil Cioran wrote, "We are nothing but a divine error, a cosmic accident, something that should never have happened." A phrase that in a few words condenses his merciless vision of human existence. But what does it mean to consider birth as the real problem of existence? It is a thought that challenges our deepest beliefs, an idea that destabilizes every attempt to find comfort in life. Emil found answers that many would prefer to ignore. He was a thinker who dared to peer into the depths of human suffering and the meaning of life. His origins, his ideas about the futility of happiness, and his belief that pain is the beating heart of existence, raise provocative questions that continue to stimulate profound reflections today. He was born in 1911 in Resinar, a small village in Transylvania, in a Romania that seemed trapped between a rural past and an uncertain future. The son of an Orthodox priest and a deeply religious mother, Cioran grew up surrounded by a world in which faith permeated every aspect of daily life. Yet from his earliest years, a sense of uneasiness emerged in him. He soon rejected religion, finding in philosophy a means to explore his profound existential unease. In Romania, a country he described as a trade union of failure, the roots of his thinking began to take shape. It was a place that, in his eyes, seemed devoid of energy and ambition, where days passed without direction, and where society, in his opinion, lived trapped in a sort of chronic immobility. For Cioran, this was an evident limitation, a sort of collective paralysis that he saw as a reflection of the human condition, a constant struggle against a void that, in the end, always prevails. During his university years in Bucharest, he came into contact with a unique intellectual environment. A figure who influenced him deeply was Professor Ionescu, a teacher as brilliant as he was unpredictable. He was known for his unconventional approach. His lectures could range from moments of brilliant insight to chaotic, often improvised sessions, and it was not uncommon for him to simply not show up, claiming he had nothing to say. This way of doing things, so far from rigid academic canons, left a deep mark on Cioran, fueling his inclination to see life as something intrinsically disordered and unpredictable. The atmosphere of those years, steeped in chaos and melancholy, played a key role in shaping the philosopher's pessimistic vision. It was not just Ionescu's lectures, but the entire cultural and social context. Bucharest at the time was a city poised between tradition and modernity, a land of contradictions where progress always seemed far away, and national identity seemed doomed to collective defeat. In this environment, Cioran developed the conviction that life was a struggle against absurdity, and that human destiny was irremediably marked by failure. This phase of his life, although marked by a strong sense of disillusionment, also represented the beginning of an intellectual journey that would lead him to question the great questions of existence. What is the meaning of life? Why do we continue to search for it even though it seems to continually elude us? Questions that would later become the beating heart of his philosophy. If you like, you can support our work by subscribing to the channel, leaving a like or with a donation via the super thank you below. It is curious to think how an environment so apparently sterile for ambition and progress could have given birth to one of the most radical and provocative thoughts of modern philosophy. Perhaps, as often happens, it is precisely in the places most full of contradictions that the most revolutionary minds are born. Cioran was not just a passive observer of his reality, but a thinker who knew how to transform disenchantment into deep reflection. And this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge every certainty about existence. The disaster of birth, according to him, is not a simple philosophical concept, but the beating heart of his vision of life. For him, being born is not a reason for celebration, but the beginning of an inexorable condemnation. Life, he argued, is a ridiculous accident, an event that is imposed without the possibility of choice, like a door that opens without consent and pushes into a world made of suffering and continuous struggle. Before birth, there is perfect silence, that deep and pristine peace that only non-existence can offer. After, there is consciousness, that faculty that, instead of elevating us, turns into a trap. Consciousness becomes a blade stuck in the flesh, a weight that forces us to confront the absurdity of existence every day. Cioran's anti-natalist thought develops precisely from this radical perspective. Procreation, he said, is nothing but a selfish act, an ethical crime. Imagine for a moment, bringing another life into the world means exposing it to an existence inevitably marked by pain. It is an act that, according to Cioran, cannot be justified because it implies deciding for another being without the latter being able to express its consent. Suffering for him is not an eventuality, but a certainty. In one of his most provocative statements, he said he had committed every crime except that of being a father. This sentence contains the core of his thought. Generating a new life is the supreme act that perpetuates the condemnation of existence. And happiness? Cioran does not deny that happiness exists, but he reduces it to an illusion, a farce that the mind puts on to distract us from reality. For him, happiness is like a mirage in the desert. It appears seductive but vanishes as soon as we get close to it. It is fleeting, superficial, incapable of lasting. The true depth of life is found elsewhere, in suffering. Because it is precisely in moments of pain that the true nature of existence manifests itself. Happiness, with its temporary nature, acts as a veil, a mask that covers only for a moment the emptiness we feel inside, but which quickly dissolves, leaving us face to face with reality again. Cioran does not propose to ignore pain, but to look it in the eyes and understand it for what it is, that is, an essential part of the human experience. This perspective is certainly not easy to accept, but it opens to a profound reflection on our nature and on what we consider important in life. Because in the end, ignoring pain does not eliminate it. On the contrary, it pushes us to chase momentary happiness that leaves us more empty than before. What does it mean, then, to live knowing that suffering is inevitable? Cioran suggests an uncomfortable truth. Accepting that pain is not a mistake, but a constant, can lead us to live more authentically. Not because pain is beautiful, but because recognizing it allows us to face life with a more honest and aware gaze. I wonder then how a man who had such a radical and bleak vision of human existence could have lived. Cioran found in writing a way to deal with the weight of existence. He defined his creative act as a postponed suicide, an escape valve that allowed him to survive. His aphorisms, dense and emotional fragments of thought, reflected not only his pain but also his ability to accept it and transform it into something meaningful. He did not seek coherence in his works, but authenticity, capturing his momentary truths without worrying about contradictions. Acceptance of failure became a central part of his philosophy. He saw it not as something to be avoided, but as a reality to be embraced. Recognizing that birth is a defeat can, paradoxically, lighten the burden of life. In this perspective, irony becomes a form of survival, a way to face the absurdity of existence with a pinch of lightness. Having settled in Paris, where he spent most of his life, Cioran continued to write until his death in 1995. Today, his thinking continues to provoke and challenge our beliefs. His reflections force us to face reality without veils, to confront the questions we often avoid. His philosophy does not offer easy solutions, but invites us to consider the possibility that, in recognizing the chaotic and painful nature of life, we can find a certain kind of peace. What do these reflections provoke in you? That's all for this video. See you soon.